Year 8 English video on the text once. This is the first of a number of videos, and it is an introduction, primarily asking the question, what genre is the book once? Well, genre is a technical term, and here is the definition from the Collins Online Dictionary. It says, a genre is a particular type of literature. It's literature that belongs to a class because it has special characteristics. Well, there are a number of different genres. The genre of once is historical fiction. Historical fiction goes all the way back to the early 1800s. The first modern historical fiction work was written by Sir Walter Scott. That work is called Ivanhoe. It's a very popular book, and it has Robin Hood as one of its characters in it. The historical background of Ivanhoe is 12th century English history. So going right back into the 12th century, we find the conflict between Normans and the Saxons being the peasant class and the Normans being the overlords. Ivanhoe was one of the first in the genre of historical fiction. If we go to France, we find Victor Hugo. He wrote the very famous book, The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Notre Dame is a very famous cathedral of Gothic architecture, and Hugo wrote his book because he didn't want to see that architecture modernised. The cathedral is a main character in this book. In America, The Last of the Mohicans by James Fenimore Cooper is a really impressive work of historical fiction and one of the first to come out of America. It's set against the French Indian Wars of the 1750s and 60s. If we move to England, the great writer Charles Dickens wrote A Tale of Two Cities. This fictional story is against the backdrop of the revolution happening in Paris as opposed to what was happening in London, and a comparison of both cities. Again, fictional, but based in historical reality. Perhaps the pinnacle of historical fiction writing is from Leo Tolstoy in Russia. War and Peace is a great story set against the backdrop of the Napoleonic Wars, with Napoleon in 1812 invading Russia. So you can see historical fiction has a great pedigree, and it's in this tradition that Morris Gleitzman has written the book Once. It's a piece of historical fiction. It's fiction, it comes from someone's imagination, but it's based in events that really did happen. Now, if we turn to the very back of the book, we see that Morris Gleitzman, the author, has written a letter to the reader. And it has some very interesting information. So what we need to do is we need to get our pencil or a highlighter, I usually underline, and highlight that first thing. This story came from my imagination, but it was inspired by real events. What does this statement say about the book? It says straight away that this is historical fiction. So you need to get your pencil out and you need to write genre, historical fiction. So you should have the underlined and a little note around here saying that this section is historical fiction. Now, if we read on, it tells us what the historical background to this novel is. 1939 to 1945, the world was at war. This is World War II. It talks about Adolf Hitler and the Nazis. And in particular, the part of World War II that this book focuses on is the murder of 6 million Jews, 6 million men, women and children. And this killing of the Jews is called the Holocaust. So it is the Holocaust here that is the historical background to our text once. So make sure in the back of the book you have these areas marked. The historical background is the Holocaust, so you can put a little note that this is the historical background of the book. So it has to do with the setting. Okay, So make sure you write those little notes around here and have those areas underlined. So we've discussed the genre of Once is historical fiction, and the historical background of this book is the Holocaust,